This is a fundamental attack on our democracy. It's not about immigration. It's not about safety. It's about authoritarianism. And we're going to push back and we're going to defend Chicago and all American cities against this tyrant.
That was Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson criticizing the president's continued push to send the National Guard into his city. The battle between Democratic-led cities and President Trump hitting an inflection point today when the president posted on Truth Social that the Chicago mayor and the Illinois governor, J.B. Pritzker, should be jailed for, quote, failing to protect the ICE officers. Here's how the mayor and governor responded.
It's certainly not the first time that Donald Trump has called for the arresting of a black man unjustly. I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to stay firm as the mayor of this amazing city.
This is a convicted felon. I mean, think about that, who's threatening to jail me. I got to say, this guy's unhinged. He's insecure. He's a wannabe dictator. And there's one thing I really want to say to Donald Trump. If you come for my people, you come through me. So come and get me.
All right, my panel's back, and we also want to bring in Major General Randy Manner into the arena, the former acting Vice Chief of the National Guard Bureau. General Manner, let me start with you here. A pretty remarkable call from President Trump there to say that these two men should be jailed. These two political leaders should be jailed. What's your reaction?
I happen to agree with the governor and the mayor that the president is becoming more and more unhinged. He is acting irrationally, even beyond what he was previously. The idea is completely not about immigration anymore. This is about him escalating his intimidation of cities and leaders who are not supportive of him. And this is nothing more than using the military as one more technique of intimidation. It's very sad, and every American should be alarmed at this invasion of states' rights.
General, what do you make of the way that some states, in the case of Texas, for example, Governor Abbott is sending his National Guard to Illinois? CNN reporters have now seen Texas National Guard troops on the ground there. What kind of precedent does that set? I mean, how should we be understanding that in your view?
This is unprecedented. This has not happened before, ever, where a governor sends in troops to another state's governor that are not welcome. This is, again, full indication of a dictatorship and intimidation in the use of the military. And it shows, quite frankly, whether it's Texas sending troops to another state, or quite frankly, in Tennessee, where the president called up the governor and said, "Why don't you deploy your National Guard in Memphis?" Well, remember, the governor of Tennessee could have done that on his own beforehand, but whenever the president called and said, "I need a favor, I need you to do this for me," that's 100% political. There is no crisis. And what is happening is the president and the administration with Stephen Miller are trying to create false flags and hoping something goes wrong where ICE members are perhaps even killed so that they can bring in thousands of federal troops. And that's what is extremely difficult here. This is not about de-escalation. The president has no intent to de-escalate. He only wants to escalate and to divide and to feed his own ego. End of story.
Kristen Soltis-Anderson, one thing that I have been wondering as we've been covering this story around immigration, and we've seen more and more pictures of people being, arrested or, put in vans, is whether there is a tipping point where voters have started to look at this and say, I was for the secure border. I, don't think undocumented immigrants should be in the country, but this is like too much for me. And there is some polling. 51% of Americans in this recent New York Times Siena poll said that 51% say that his immigration enforcement, the president's immigration enforcement, has gone too far. How do you understand these numbers, and what is your data telling you about this question?
Yeah, so the president, since he has been sworn back into office, immigration has typically been one of his stronger issues, but his numbers have fallen a bit since January, and I think it's in part from what you're talking about, that there are some voters who said, I feel like the border is in complete crisis, I feel like there's no control over the situation, so I'm willing to give the president a lot of latitude to do some things that might be outside my comfort zone to solve the problem. But as voters now feel like the border is more secure, and as we've now turned really toward this interior enforcement, there are images where people are going, well, wait a minute, I wanted the bad guys to get deported. I don't know about this person in my community. Are they really a bad guy? And so that's the line that President Trump has to walk. The best thing that he has going for him right now is that he has a message of, I'm doing this thing, and voters go, you're doing something, I might not love it. They're not at all sure what Democrats' plan would be on this issue, which is why he still retains a really big kind of issue handling advantage over Democrats on immigration.
And of course, the other question here and the general touched on this, but the use of the National Guard in this same poll, 53% say that Trump's actions have gone too far on that. Is this another risk point for him?
Well, I think a lot about, the extent to which the polls did or didn't move in June, when we had the National Guard go in response to protests about ICE in Los Angeles. We've seen this happen before, and it sort of very quickly got consumed by other news stories. So it remains to be seen, will this be a rerun of that? Will this be different in some way to what happened in Los Angeles? I think that's still an open question.
But, Donald Trump didn't create this problem. This problem was created by governors and mayors in blue states and blue cities who refused to help enforce immigration law. Article 6 of the Constitution says there is federal supremacy. Immigration law falls under that. The federal government's laws on immigration triumph. And it's the job of governors and mayors and police chiefs and sheriffs to help enforce it. And if these blue state mayors and police had been helping ICE enforce immigration laws, if they would help them now, then you could be a lot more precise. You could get the bad actors, you get the criminal actors out. Because the states are not helping enforce the immigration laws, you're forcing the federal government to do some things that it probably would rather not do.
Well, I will say that Stephen Miller demanding a certain number of people be deported is also making it harder to meet those quotas. General Randy Manner, I do want to give you a brief last word here as we've been talking about this. What would you leave us with?
It's important to understand that the National Guard that are being deployed from Texas, they are professionals, they are orderly, they understand the rule of law. It is not like the ICE agents, which quite frankly, that is the equivalent of Trump's Gestapo, poorly trained. They've acted like a mob and they cover their faces, they want anonymity, they look like a bunch of Proud Boys. Please ensure that all of your listeners treat the guardsmen with respect, and they will do the same for you. They are not undisciplined thugs. They are your sons and daughters in uniform, and you should look at them that way.
All right, General Randy Manner, thanks very much for being with us today, sir. I appreciate it.